and thank you for joining me on this video where I'm going to be focusing on a very powerful method to break your procrastination. There are things in your life that you kind of keep pushing into the future that you want to avoid or you hate doing, and it's very natural. It just happens to every one of us, but perhaps for different topics, and some of it might even feel silly, but some of them you can probably relate to. I'm not sure if anybody enjoys doing their taxes. There's a bit of uncertainty. Maybe you'll end up paying more than you think. Maybe you'll discover you're missing some documents, and maybe there's a threat of, getting audited or something. Almost all of us hate it and keep pushing it to the last moment. Most of us, at least. There might be other things that you find difficult to do. Now, I will go through a few methods which are going to be very suitable for a mind map environment. And that's the usual theme that I cover is mind maps, and specifically I use Mindmap, and you can see the link below. And I will show you how these tools help you break the ice. I call these like icebreakers, but that's a personal term. You might call it anything you like. But I will show you the specific steps and some of the methods that help you break through these. And some of the things that I cover might seem simple, but I do insist that you push through, because actually you will discover that some of the simplest things are the most powerful tools that you can use. So let's get started. Okay, so now here on my screen you will see a very complicated diagram which I've used in other classes as well, and which I use personally to tackle some of the difficult topics that I'm working on. Now, the method that I'm going to talk about is, again, I call it the icebreaker, because you kind of have to power through something. And here I've created my own icebreaker specifically to model a simple building and texture it. I have no idea why I got stuck on this. I really don't, but it just kept sitting there for the longest time. I kind of felt I knew how to do that, but it were things that I needed to try for the first time. Maybe that was the reason. I really don't know. But what I did was, let me just maybe create a new one and move this around to show you how it's done. Again, some of the methods here you might want to modify or use it personalized your way. But what I did initially was, first I explicitly call this an icebreaker. And I did not write my goal, which was kind of a mistake. So here the idea is to model a 3D icon building. So this is a very simple building that I wanted to model to use as a 3D icon on a map, on a 3D map. So the visuals, I do like to create visuals where the goal or the process is somewhat reflected in the colors or the geometry. This is nice because you are drawn to it and it kind of propels you forward. So here I called it an icebreaker. Let me click on the right click, the menu, hit A, and place this in the center. So you might want to do this differently. You might want to have another section which defines your goal. It's up to you. But the important thing here is I'm not going to make this a free concept map. That's not the goal. The goal here is to have a certain structure because it's going to flow in a certain way. So what I do use here is, again, it's kind of up to you, is a left-facing tree chart. And once that's in place, anything I add kind of falls into the structure here. Now, let me just Control-Z, I accidentally dragged this up. Which kind of illustrates a point is that I couldn't just drag it randomly, it just stays in the tree. Either it becomes a child of another element in the tree, or it becomes like a sibling in another position. So as you take something, drag it, you can't just drag it out. It either is a part of the sibling structure, or it becomes a child like this. So I'm just going to hit Control-Z because I don't want to mess this up. And again, I want to bring this down. Okay, so what is an icebreaker? Now, you've probably heard a number of times over the years that if something is difficult, you have to break it down into simpler pieces. Well done, and it's a good advice, but it's kind of hard to just keep that in your head because we're kind of thinking linearly. So if you have a new goal, you kind of focus on that and you're not exactly sure how many steps forward you're thinking. So it's a great idea to actually write this properly. So in my case, what I did was I broke it down into a number of pieces. The task, which was to create a 3D building. So what was the first one? Let's just copy this here. Hit Tab to continue on this. Just copy it here. See, as I drag this, it moves in. Like, it's not like the other ones where only the parent is moving. Once you have a tree structure or another rigid structure, logic chart, things like that, then they move with the parent, which makes life easy. For time being, let me just copy this around. Okay, I just put this style because, again, it's a personal thing. It's like icebreaker, so I'm putting like hard edges or whatnot. If you want to turn this into a task, you can click on it, Control-Alt-T. It becomes a task which you can close and open from here. So let me just pull this back in. I do not do that, by the way. I don't keep these as, they are tasks, but they don't have to be because I don't close them. The reason is I do like to see things that I've closed to show me the progress. Like if I'm doing an icebreaker, I want to see that I've gone quite a bit, like almost halfway there. Let's keep going, which is something I cover in another video, the sunk cost fallacy. Like if you invest into this, after a while, you're like, okay, I've gone too far. I might as well finish it. So here you can create these tasks one after the other. Now, what I want to emphasize, and I know that this sounds maybe too simplistic, but just want to emphasize, the task you create can be as simple as it can be absolutely ridiculous. Like one example that I like to give is if you don't want to do your taxes, just, for example, for that day, just that day, but not too far into April, but maybe sometime in March, you give yourself a task. You're like, I'm going to take my W-9 out of my drawer, put it on the kitchen table, and put a paperweight on it. It takes what, 10 seconds? You may feel this is ridiculous. Like, what is this? Like in my case, what was it? Create a Blender directory for the digital twin. How long does that take? 10 seconds? Nothing. But it gets the ball rolling, and that's very important. You kind of feel you're propelled forward. You can add these one after the other. What is the other one that I have here? It's a new file under the 3D icons directory. Look into ChatGPT to stitch up the side images. So that kind of is a little more complicated. This is for the texturing and put the images into the directory and on and on and on. So it keeps going. I haven't finished this yet, but believe me, this just became so much easier. I've actually started working on this. I've already done this, by the way. Wait a sec. I forgot to update this. So let me just add this icon. A green check. Yeah, I already did this. Did I size the box? Why not? I did that as well. So yeah, I forgot to update it, but I've actually kept going. I'm kind of halfway through this, so I'm not going to finish that. So the idea is you make it very simple. You can add notes if you like, just to provide feedback. You can add links to make your life easier because, let's say, review the UV class. Now, when you get to this step, you want this to be very easy, very smooth. So you don't want to think about where was the UV class? No, just put a link, click it, it's right here. These are the things you want to do. You want to make it very simple. You want to make sure the steps are very easy to follow and kind of propel you forward. This might also work in certain sequences. If you put these in, let's say, a timeline where almost all the steps are tough, or some of the steps are tough. So you can have one icebreaker after the other until you reach a very, very difficult goal. So you can just keep breaking them. And you will discover over time that each subsequent one is easier than the previous because your knowledge and your capability with regards to that tough goal has been increasing as you follow these steps. So again, I hope this becomes an important part of your toolkit and that you find yourself achieving more and more difficult things by using mind maps in this manner. And I thank you again for sticking around and hope to see you in another video. Take it easy.